That's right. That's, naturally our focus for this morning, that National Assembly passing that supplementary budget, 2.1 trillion supplementary budget. And I know there's been a lot of reactions being that, wow, so the National Assembly can actually consider and pass anything at all in such a short time. First reading, second reading, and passage. That means that they can work. So why does it seem like it takes time for some other issues to be given attention? You know, sometimes it seems the National Assembly or members of the National Assembly are too busy for it. But we'll also look at, of course, some of those additions with Mr. Ojudemezue, the managing consultant and chief executive officer of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. Joins us virtually from Kigali, Rwanda. Mr. Ojudemezue, thank you for taking our time from your busy schedule for us this morning.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm quite grateful to be on this platform. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would like to get your perspective, you know, on that first reaction. A lot of Nigerians have been talking about it, especially since yesterday, to say, I didn't know the National Assembly could work so fast. It's such a short time.
My dear friend, good morning again. When it comes to spending Nigeria's money, and when the 3 tiers of government agree on the spend, you can see things work so fast in this country. As we keep saying, the political class, they may argue, fight, do whatever during the political stage, but once it comes to coming together to spend, and they have an agreement on what to spend, you see speed in government machinery working. And that's somehow very paradoxical and also very interesting at the same time. So congratulations to the National Assembly for working so fast. But looking at that budget, one can have only a mixed feeling. Nigeria does not need to get to the point where we declare bankruptcy for us to know that we have to come down our fiscal cliff, for us to know that we have to slow down our spending. A budget, national budget in a year of almost 22 trillion naira for a country that barely manages to raise actual revenue of about 7 to 8 trillion is a very sad situation. Debt service to revenue gap, ratio is getting more and more dangerous, and we're coming to that point where Nigeria will enter a real and imminent debt trap. When do we consider some form of structural adjustment and more careful spending? And when you see the way these figures are jumping from yacht to student budget and all kinds of permutations, you will feel that people are in a hurry to recoup election funding expenses.
Well, I knew you would touch on that yacht issue. But on the other hand, we see that 210 billion for wage award, which according to reports, some workers have affirmed receipt of 400 billion for cash transfer, 200 billion for seed and agricultural inputs. So this seems to have a human face. Does it make us happy? Does it, affirm, or, justifies the word I was thinking of? Does it justify this supplementary budget when we see these human face factors added to it?
And that's why I told you the budget for me has, makes me have a mixed feeling, because you see, when people want to take away money, they do something good, one or two things good. In Nigeria, we've seen government, make a huge amount of budget for infrastructure, and but the point is, what is the percentage actual spend? What is the value for that spend? When you announce one or two good things that will make the budget acceptable, what about the whole other things that are unacceptable and seriously unimportant at this point? This is November and December is coming. How are you telling me that the budget of 20 trillion has so run fast in security that we're spending another 600 billion, in national security? So what happened to the budget that Buhari ran before handing over to the new APC government? And then you see 200 billion agricultural production what? Between November and December, is this Nigeria's agricultural season, or are they just trying to bring in seedling? Was there no such budget in the past, in the earlier budget for the year? What is so emergency about this that we cannot plan it in January to December next budget round. So for me, the only reasonable thing I see there is the wage award to cushion the horrible impact of the fuel subsidy, which was inevitable anyway. To see how Nigerian workers can have some kind of a fair life in the midst of hyperinflation that we are experiencing right now. If you remove that 200 billion for the wage award, everything else for me, from the 400 billion conditional transfer, who are we transferring this money to? What data do we have for this transfer payments and all of that? We all know very well that even Nigerians don't know who is a Nigerian. Chadians, Nigerians, and so on penetrated into Nigeria. So what data do we have to know those who need these so-called families or households who need this support? How do we get evidence that more than 50% of that budget, if at all, everything is done, goes to the real households, not political groups and the same bourgeois who have held us down and killing this country with overspending? How are we sure that the 5 billion to students are getting to Nigerian students and not students in APC political caucuses and so on? These are the questions that beg for answer from the billions of money spent in buying cars for the presidency. Are we saying that the Buhari fantastic and nice cars that we all knew before he left have been sold off, or are they are no more fit for getting into an imminent, in fact, almost here with us, a death trap that is facing us, can be so careless in spending. We are spending billions of naira to buy cars for the office of the wife of the president. Who does that at this time? It shows me that this government, in as much as I admire their bold steps in trying to reform the economy, this government is not thinking in a different manner than the previous government that we've had. Their body language shows a mixture of willingness to do something different, and the way we are announcing spending now shows that we have not yet realized that Nigeria is in a deep hole of debt trap. It's quite sad to me, actually.
We'll get to that debt, but I mean, talking about the vehicle, we see that 7.5 billion is budgeted for procurement of vehicles for the State House. And I mean, it also brings up the issue of why can't we use the Nigerian-made car? If at all we have to buy cars, at least it will move the fund around. Yesterday I attended an event talking about public sector reforms, and somebody said, well, we've been doing reforms in the public sector almost every year or every administration. When do we expect to actually see these reforms? If the public sector is asking Nigerians to cut their coat and bear with the tight season with macroeconomic headwinds, what example are they showing that they're also feeling and leading by example?
My dear sister, you have captured the point exactly. In Nigeria, only the poor will keep tightening their belts until their skeleton begins to pain them, while the governments are getting both bigger and bigger with pot belly, with attendant diabetes, high blood pressure, and showing that they are reformist in any form. With this supplementary budget hurriedly approved, within less than 2 months to the end of the fiscal year, I can bet you that this government is preparing for a big spend in the next 4 years. Big spend that a little of it can reflect in real infrastructural development. Big spend that a bit of it can be used in something positive. But a whole lot of waste is coming to happen again. Unfortunately, we don't have the revenue to waste. So we borrow to a point where debt service to revenue ratio is now 90%. Do we get to the point where we now announce bankruptcy, like our neighbors in West Africa have announced, and then we now begin to know that we're in a big problem? So it is not justifiable to even buy these vehicles at all. Whether and if they must buy it, we have local brands like Innocent and the rest of them. We can use those. One, because they are much cheaper. If at all we need these vehicles, they are much, much cheaper, and we can save money to pursue real issues to this, in this country. What has happened to the government's quick desire to create space for the micro, medium, and small enterprises to grow, knowing that that's the only way we can create sustainable and growth and prosperity for all. if you put all the monies together that they plan to waste now, you can drop 5 billion in every on this platform. I don't know if you can still hear me. Looks like I'm frozen. Let me know if you can still hear me, please.
I hear you. Please go ahead.
All right. So I had said it before. The things to do to make this country work are very simple and yet strategic, but we don't do them. If you collect some of these wastages we're having in this supplementary budget and drop within either the Bank of Industry or a committee of bank, bankers committee, and set up a quasi, either commercial development finance institution to be disbursed in 100 SMEs that bring back entrepreneurship to attack non-oil exports and so on, this country will see the impact in the foreseeable future. But we won't do that. We'll keep changing cars, we keep doing technology enhancement in the offices of our ministers and so on. We keep sharing money that we call conditional transfers. To whom we share the money, we don't know. The data with which we share this money, we don't know. Nigeria is not seeing a serious reformer yet. And yet I know that this government, if they choose to work, can do it if they choose to. But they're not looking at the way this government came up. I'm not surprised that there's this hurry to pull money out of this country for no justifiable reason. This 2.17 trillion for me is not necessary, apart from the 200 billion being given to workers to cushion the horrible inflation we're seeing in the country, and the very poor 30,000 minimum wage is not now up to even $30. And yet, the things that we almost import in this country are going up the roof. That's the only thing I justify in this budget, the 200 billion for workers. Outside that, everything else is, for me, a scam, because we had a budget that we planned earlier in the year, 20 trillion, with revenue in that budget being less than 7 or 8 trillion. They planned 9 trillion though, but as I know today, Nigeria have not grossed up to 8 trillion in revenue. So with a 12 trillion deficit budget, we're adding 2 more trillion to it. Who will pay this money? What capacity are we building in this economy to be able to pay this debt? What infrastructure are you seeing that will reform this economy and create more space for tourism, for business development and so on, that will bring up more tax payment, more non-oil export for us to be able to pay this? Now, and meanwhile, even the oil that we depend on, we are producing less than 1.4 million barrels per day today, not even able to meet our OPEC quota. And we're not looking at non-oil export as an immediate replacement. It's quite sad indeed, and I think this government needs to do a soul search and be sure that they are here for good in the next 4 years.
All right, Mr. Davis, I hear you about the debt servicing, a worrying one for Nigeria. I mean, we're using almost 100% of our revenue for servicing now. We don't see the revenue going up. So that means that percentage still stands, if not even growing longer. But I remember the annual meetings. The IMF has said that actually Nigeria doesn't have a debt problem, even though they're kind of worried about the servicing. But how do we, perhaps this is one of the reasons why the federal government is comfortable, going ahead in this trend, if we have international bodies saying that Nigeria does not have a debt issue.
According to my dear sister Chimamanda, that we know, that is the danger of a single story. The danger of a single story. All right? They massage our ego that we don't have a debt issue because they're looking at debt to GDP ratio being still below 30%, and then we say we can always borrow more. But nobody's asking what is happening to our revenue. Why has Nigeria continued to have a very, poor performing revenue generation due to a lot of criminal and corrupt activities going on within our country? And that revenue will never change, even if you double tax all the companies, because the people you are taxing are still the same people. And again, many Nigerians are also not willing to pay the tax because they're not seeing government performing their duties. Every Nigerian in this country, you must note, is a government of its own. People provide their own electricity, they provide their own security, they provide their own infrastructure, They provide their own water supply. Even roads, people provide their roads in their communities. So what does government do for goodness sake? So every Nigerian, including me, I'm a government of my own, local government, state government, national government, in all ramifications. So the revenue issue is a big issue that cannot be resolved because even the economy itself is structured in a way that is not revenue generation. We are still focusing on only oil and gas to raise revenue for this country. The tax revenue between the tax collection and tax rendition to government, so much loopholes happen in between. The tariffs at the port, whether it's Nigerian immigration, customs, and so on, poor accountability. A serious government will first of all, close all these loopholes. And when we see the revenue going up, you can now go on your spending spree. This is not the time for political jamboree. Sadly, that's what we're beginning to see. So we have another 4 years of big headache, of big grammar. People speak grammar like I'm speaking now. At the end of the day, nothing happens. People in government should please note that Nigeria belongs to all of us. If we kill this country, we have no other place to call our own. May God help us.
Yeah, so God help the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And we also have the power to help ourselves. I think God has given us the power to do that if we will. Mr. Davidson. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ojude Mezue, Managing Consultant and Chief Executive Officer of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. And we wish you safe travel back to Nigeria from Kigali.
I'm not coming back any soon. I have a lot of work I'm doing here in East Africa.
You're running away from your responsibility in Nigeria, Mr. Demese.
I'm doing that while you're on this platform. I'm not less Nigerian than anybody else in this country. God will help us.
Amen. Thank you so much, and do enjoy yourself right there.